Okay, welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources, the articles, videos, whatever you send us.
Yeah, and we dig in. We try to pull out the most important bits, the key takeaways, just for you.
Exactly. It's kind of your shortcut to getting the core info without wading through everything yourself.
Gets you informed quickly.
Right. And today we're doing a deep dive into the Pi network. We're looking at a specific source you pointed us to. It's a YouTube video. The title is in Arabic. Let me try. Nuse AUR GCV. Hinger to Nuse GCV. This patented when one school. 2025.
Okay, and the translation?
Roughly, Oracle Smart Contract System confirms GCV value. See the evidence now. It's from a channel called All the Digital World, basically.
Gotcha. And it seems to focus on info from someone named Dima Nouvoy. Is that right?
Yeah, Dima Nouvoy, that's the name mentioned. So our mission here is really just to unpack what this source claims.
Strictly what's in this video material. We're looking at what it says about Pi's potential value and, where it argues that value comes from.
Let's unpack this then. And wow, the first thing that just leaps out, you can't miss it, is this incredibly specific value claim for a Pi.
Yeah, it really doesn't hold back there, does it? The source states very clearly, one TIE equals $314,159.
Exactly, $314,159. That number, it's presented as a central point, right? Like the value.
Absolutely. And they say it's derived from within the Pi network system itself. It's not just pulled out of thin air, according to them.
Okay, so $314,159. It's a number that makes you sit up and take notice. How does the source actually justify this? Where does it claim it originates?
Well, the video points to what it calls official sources from the blockchain. It introduces this person, Dima Nouvoy, who's apparently explained this in an article or a post somewhere. And the source says Nouvoy uses things like the GitHub code, the project's white paper.
Ah, so the official project materials.
Exactly. The argument presented is that this value isn't just speculation. It's supposedly rooted in the project's own documentation, and crucially, its code.
Interesting. So discoverable within the system itself, not based on, say, external market trading. But how does the source say this specific number, the $314,159, is actually generated or maybe achieved by someone using Pi?
Okay, so the source links it directly to something it calls contribution. And it is very clear contribution means mining.
Mining, okay.
Yeah, the process they describe is you download the app, you mine consistently, for a long time, you complete your KYC.
No, your customer, right.
Right, and then you migrate your mined Pi over to your wallet. The idea presented is that this sustained effort, this contribution, builds up these exclusive Pi coins in your wallet. And that process is how you, as a user, supposedly tap into or generate this claimed value.
So your mining effort is directly connected to this very high value claim. That's the narrative here. And this specific value, it has a name in the source material, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. They consistently refer to this 314,159 figure as the global consensus value, or GCV.
GCV? Global consensus value.
Right. It's framed as the value that the community or the system itself has sort of agreed upon or established internally.
Got it. Global consensus value, $314,159. Now, claiming a value is one thing, but does the source say when this GCV is supposed to become, real? Are there conditions?
Yes, definitely. The source is specific about that, too. It says this GCV will be realized when a couple of key things happen in the Pi ecosystem.
Okay, like what?
Primarily, when Pi functions are launched across hundreds of decentralized applications, or dApps.
Hundreds of dApps, okay.
And this seems crucial, when the supernodes and the regular nodes for the Pi network project are fully launched and running.
So it's tied to the network actually being built out and functional with apps running on it.
Precisely. The launch of the apps and the node infrastructure is presented as the trigger for this value to manifest.
Okay. And the source, it tries to back this up with some technical sounding references, right? What kind of evidence does it point to?
It does. It mentions several points it uses as sort of proof. For one, the video shows an image described as new programming code. And in that image, you could apparently see a number close to $314,000.
So like a visual confirmation supposedly embedded in the code.
That's how it's presented, yes. It also mentions 2 testing commercial wallets being examined right now. The implication is that this testing relates to the network's value and function.
Testing wallets, okay.
And then it brings up Oracle price feeds in smart contracts. It mentions a link related to this.
Oracles. Those usually bring external data onto a blockchain, right?
Typically, yes. So the source seems to be hinting that these smart contracts have elements designed to somehow interact with or reflect this high value, maybe connecting internal logic to external price points, though it doesn't really detail how.
Interesting hint, but vague on the mechanism. What about specific code things? Any identifiers mentioned?
Yeah, it gets quite specific there. It mentions things like Pi Smart Contracts TX,
Okay.
and it identifies the Pi application store developer as someone named Kakashi again. Apologies, the spelling isn't quite right.
Kakashi, the developer.
Yes. And the really critical point the source makes is that this value, 314,159, is explicitly stated to be visible and confirmed within the programming for these smart contracts.
Visible in the smart contract code.
That's the assertion. And it links this programming directly back to this developer, Kakashi, sort of using that connection to validate the claim.
Wow. So the core argument from this source is, this isn't just wishful thinking. It's a number they claim you can actually see in the official code, specifically in the smart contracts built by named developers. And that's the ultimate proof for the GCV.
That's exactly the connection the source makes. It presents this as the foundational evidence for that huge $314,159 figure.
Okay, so moving away from the technical side a bit.
Right.
What kind of advice or message does this source give to people actually mining Pi right now, the ones it calls real pioneers?
The message is pretty direct, according to this source. It basically tells them, stay focused, keep doing what you're doing with mining, and actively ignore all the external noise.
External noise, meaning what?
It describes this noise as, like, analysis that doesn't have real data behind it, or just negative comments, skepticism, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Instead, it urges pioneers to put their trust only in the official project sources, specifically the white paper, the source code on GitHub, and the Pi browser.
The internal channels.
Right. And it points out that figures like this Dima Nuvoy apparently work exclusively from these official sources when they provide their explanations.
So the takeaway message for the audience of this source is filter everything else out, ignore the critics, and just rely completely on the project's own materials and the interpretations provided by proponents like Nuvoy within the source.
Exactly that. The emphasis is 100% on the internal official narrative as the sole source of truth about Pi's value and progress.
And just to wrap up the source's argument, how does it conclude regarding that big number, the $314,159?
Well, it concludes pretty strongly. The source states explicitly that this article or post by Dima Nuvoy confirms, that's the word used, confirms that 1 pi equals $314,159.
Confirms it?
Yes. And it repeats that this value is expected to be realized, like we said, when the applications and the network nodes are fully launched.
Okay, so let's recap what we've pulled from this specific source material. We've got this really striking claim, a global consensus value, GCV, of $314,159 per pi.
Yeah, a very precise, very high number.
And the source argues this value isn't just aspirational, but is actually embedded, even visible, within the project's own official code and smart contracts.
Right, linking it to specific developers and code elements as evidence.
Then there's the strong connection drawn between a user's long-term mining, what it calls contribution, and actually achieving or accessing this value.
Making the user's effort central to the value proposition.
Plus the specific conditions for this value to become real. The launch of hundreds of dApps and the full network infrastructure, the nodes.
Key development milestones acting as the trigger.
And finally, that clear advice to the community. Trust only the internal official sources like the white paper and GitHub. Disregard all external analysis or negativity.
Yeah, a call to focus inward and trust the project's narrative as presented in the source. It builds a picture where value comes entirely from the project's design and the community's belief and effort, insulated from outside views.
Right. So for you, our listener, here's something to chew on based on this deep dive into the source material. This video source presents a case where a specific, extremely high value for Pi is claimed to be confirmed within the code. It's tied directly to community mining effort and future network milestones. So what does this perspective suggest about how value itself is being defined or maybe aimed for within this particular project? How does that compare or contrast with, say, traditional market dynamics where price discovery happens through open buying and selling?
Yeah, it raises questions, doesn't it? What does this specific approach tell you about the interplay they envision between the code itself, the community's collective belief or consensus, the actual development progress, and how that might eventually connect or not connect with broader adoption or external valuation? Something to think about.